Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody to the SORA June webinar. My name is Summer. I'm on the exec um, board for SORA, and I'll be kind of emceeing for today. We're excited to see folks in here, and glad you're coming today. So, a few housekeeping things I want to talk about before we get started. Woo. Um, So first, as you might have guessed, this webinar is being recorded. We will be posting the video on our website and our YouTube channel after today. So if you need to pop out or you just didn't have a chance to watch this fully, um, stay tuned. You can watch the full thing in a couple days. We do have some folks monitoring the chat for questions if you have any coming up. Uh, and then just as a little preview of what we're doing today, first kind of half of today's webinar, we have Rochelle here from SORA, who's going to talk about kind of things to consider when you're creating data visualizations. So she's going to take us through that first. And then after that, we're going to kind of do a show and tell of some visualizations that folks have submitted to us. And for those who have submitted visualizations, we'll give you a chance to talk for a few minutes, give us a little background about your visualization, how you made it, whatever little things you want to highlight about it. And then towards the end, we'll kind of do an informal vote for the winner and ultimate bragging rights. That's kind of what we've got on deck for today. And I think that's kind of enough from me here. So I'll pass things over to Rochelle and stop sharing and we'll get the party started.
Great. Thank you so much, Summer. Really appreciate it. As she said, hi, my name is Rochelle Rafn, and I'm going to walk through some things to consider with data visualizations, also just things to consider when you're just trying to communicate with the information that you have. And, a lot of it is fairly basic stuff. Some of it's things to consider outside of some of the general accessibility things we think of, like, color blindness and other things like that. But there's definitely a lot of other things to consider as well, as far as how people's minds work and what they can see or hear. And so there's just a lot of variables to think about when you're talking about data, especially because some of us just kind of have that mind, and other people, they have to work with data all the time, but maybe that's not naturally how their brain is working. So I like to really think about all the considerations when I'm pulling information and trying to communicate it to people. So with that said, I will share my screen and can everyone see that? Okay, I'm going to assume, unless I hear otherwise. Okay, I see thumbs up. Great. So the first thing I'll do is run you through kind of my background. And to show you my background, I'm just going to start with the raw data. So I like to show this as an example because, when we're presenting information and say there's data and there's all these lines or all this information that we're trying to give to people, it can be a lot if you're just putting it all on the screen. So a lot of text tends to create a lot of cognitive burden. And so there's multiple different ways that you can kind of break it down. But obviously, if I were to say, hey, this is me, here's all of my experience, which this isn't actually all my experience, but it's just an example of a resume. But this is technically giving you all the information you need, but is it really easy to, figure out what's on there? I mean, is it easy to read that and listen to me at the same time? Probably not. So, some people go with just bullet points. So in the past, I owned a restaurant for a long time. I'm also the executive director of a professional orchestra in town, in addition to working for the state. But yeah, so I have a really unconventional background. So, this is really interesting to look at. You can look at some of the bullet points as I talk, and you have the logos to give you a little more of an impression of my experience and background. But if I go a step further and include some type of imagery, then it really gives people even more of a sense and connects them to the story that you're telling. So, yeah, my husband and I owned a restaurant for 8 years. I was the business manager, general manager of the operation. I led a lot of our data analysis and strategy and business insights and bookkeeping and all of that stuff while my husband was the chef. And here in the pictures, you can kind of see that a little better. And then moving on, as I mentioned, I'm also the executive director of a professional orchestra on the side, which actually, if anyone's into professional or classical music, we have a concert coming up on June 28th. So anyway, just thought I'd put that little plug in there too. So, having pictures is nice, trying to minimize bullet points to make sure to reduce the cognitive burden. So after a little while, owning the restaurant, I realized how much I loved doing the business side of things, and I didn't want to own a restaurant forever. So I went back to school and I received my master's in business administration, as well as my master's in data science. And so, yeah, that's when I realized that I am a huge, huge data nerd. So anyway, why is it important to consider these things? Why is it important to consider how much text you're putting on the screen or what pictures you're putting on the screen? Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up first is, you know, there's different ways that people's brains process things. And I'm not just talking about like data people and like non-data people who are technically still data people because we all use data, but I want to see thumbs up if when you're thinking about something or when you're reading a book, do you have an internal monologue? Um, do you hear the things? Does it sound like a narrator? Does it sound like you are narrating your own life and the things that are going on inside your head? Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Okay, now I'm going to give it a minute to let those pass. Now, give me a thumbs up if you're like, what is an internal monologue? I have no idea what you're talking about. Is there anyone here who who doesn't have that, who doesn't like hear things inside their head? Like for instance, I have a cousin who doesn't have that, and she has said, I just think of the things like it's just in my brain. I don't hear it as if someone's like speaking it, or I'm not hearing my own voice narrate as like third person. So I'm not seeing any hands with that. So that's interesting. But yeah, there are people who don't have that. Oh, I think I saw one hand pop up. Um, but anyway, so that's really important to think when it comes to the text on the screen, because if a lot of the people hear what they're reading in their own voice, they're trying to compete with hearing the voice of their own head with the speaking that you're doing when you're communicating the information on the screen. So that's why having too much text on the screen and trying to reduce the bullet points down to like just maybe a one liner is really important, because they might miss the things you're saying, or they may not see or be able to read what you have on the screen anyway. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is aphantasia. Again, another either raise of hands or thumbs up. Does anyone know what this term means? Has anyone heard of this? Okay, I'm seeing some. So for those of you who don't know what aphantasia is, it's basically you don't have a mind's eye. So I'm a person that has both. I have an extremely vivid mind's eye, and I also have an internal monologue. And also with the internal monologue thing, to circle back to that, there are some people who have it and it's just like constantly going. Other people who have it and it's maybe a little more calm, but there's a lot of both. So with aphantasia, basically, oh, I got to get back to the screen here. Um, if I say, imagine an apple, when you think of an apple, are you actually seeing one in your head? And there's multiple different levels of this aphantasia or the mind's eye. So the first level, if you have aphantasia, is you can't visualize that thing at all. You can't see it. There's nothing that pops into your brain. You just don't have any like visual memory inside of your head where you can visualize that thing. The second level is maybe you can see like the outlining of it, or like just the essence of what an apple is, but it's not really detailed. It's just kind of like, foggy. And it goes on from there until you can actually, with a true mind's eye, see a real detailed apple. So this is another consideration to think when you're using visualizations, because as we talk about all the different learning types, there's visual learners, there's auditory learners, there's people who need to learn by doing. um, in reality, a lot of the research has shown that we're not all just one of those things. We are actually multiple of those things. And so if we are able to see and hear something at the same time and possibly write it down, we're going to be much more likely to absorb that information and understand it. So in the same way with communicating with data, it's important not to just tell people and not to just show them, but if you're able to like speak and show at the same time, then people are more likely to be able to understand what you're saying and retain it. So especially people who don't have a mind's eye, um, if you're trying to communicate to them, oh, this is the fluctuation in sales that we've had, or this, is the trend in the demographics that we've had. Maybe some of us with a mind's eye could see that in a graph in our head and be able to, understand or be intuitive about what they're trying to say. But if someone doesn't have a mind's eye, maybe they would understand, but it would be harder for them to, because having the visualization to actually see with their eyes will solidify it even more. I'm just looking at some of the chats here really quick. Smell and taste the apple too. That is really interesting. So, yeah, it's crazy how you know minds work. Um, so moving on, some other principles to think about, and if you want to write this down, it's called the Gestalt principles, and these are just some guidelines as far as different ways that you can visualize data, depending on what it is that you're trying to show and capture within certain groupings and things. So with the Gestalt principles, and I'll just go through this pretty quickly, but you can certainly search and research it yourself. The six main ones are proximity, similarity, enclosure, closure, continuity, and connection. So as you can see here, there's different ways that you can show that different parts of the data are related. So what is the proximity to each other? I think about some of the clustering that happens in data science work, especially with like machine learning and figuring out, oh, well, these ones are close together and these are close together, so those must be similar. But say there's clustering, but they're not actually the clusters that are similar. It's the things that are, spread out. But how can we visualize that actually these things are the ones that are closest together? And that's by highlighting, like, for instance, by color to show that they're similar items. Enclosure, as you can see here, is when you take the data and say there is like a segment or something that you want to bring attention to or highlight. That is enclosure, by using some type of box or circle or shading to show that these are the things that I want to bring attention to. Closure is interesting because it is showing a section, but it doesn't have to be a full shaded box like this. But even though there's the spaces between the lines here, our eyes see it as a continuous kind of enclosed section. Continuity. So this one's really interesting because depending on how you decide to shade the colors of the dots here under continuity, we could be shading the line above, or we could be shading the line from top to bottom. So depending on what your data is showing, if you have one line and another, and you're trying to show that it's actually these two that are showing some kind of pattern versus the like up and down versus the horizontal, this is another way that you can definitely, figure out how to use color and connect the things together. So connection again. So I think about sometimes the charts that are have the different data points on the sides, and then you're using the lines to go across, or like different flow charts and things. That's what I would consider connection. So that's also another way that you can just show what data is relevant and what is connected. So yeah, definitely look into the Gestalt principles. I think that it's really good information, and certainly there's a lot more information about it out there. So the next thing I want to talk about is understanding your audience. And this is probably the most key because obviously, as far as working for the state, there's a wide span of different people that are working here and, varying different jobs and things that, we need to analyze or people we need to communicate with. Maybe you're in a data specific job. Maybe you're a decision maker. Maybe you're neither of those things, but you're kind of in the middle and you have to use the data to communicate things. So knowing who it is you're talking to is really important when you're looking at the data and figuring out who you're communicating to. So technical audiences usually are data analysts, IT, people who work with the systems and people who understand like the data engineering and the process of all of it. Non-technical detailed. So I had a boss like this that wasn't necessarily technical, but they were really good with like Excel, and they also really liked to get into the raw data and manipulate it and look at it themselves without it being just like put together in a summary. So although they didn't have the skills to be fully technical and, wrangle and do all of the data cleaning, they still liked seeing a lot of the raw stuff. Non-technical high level is more like a decision maker. So, my old agency head, she didn't want to see spreadsheets. So she's the type of person that like actually isn't really that detailed person and just really wants to have a summary and wants to have the pictures to be able to help her understand better what it is you're trying to communicate. Also, cross-functional teams. So, what team is it you're working on? What is the domain knowledge? What is the expertise? What is the jargon that I'm using that maybe another team wouldn't use, or vice versa? And making sure to break down some of those things as well. And then, of course, always we want to be concerned about sensitive or restricted data at the state. So disclosure, especially where I work at Department of Revenue, is a huge, huge deal. And there's several other agencies, I'm sure, on this call that it's also a big deal. So those are definitely things you really want to think about when uh, understanding who you're talking to. The next thing is skepticism, bias, and ethics. So first, check before defending your data. When I first started at the state, I was fresh out of school and, I'd worked with all my own data at the restaurant and, but that felt like a little more controlled and I knew where everything was coming from and I had created all of the things from scratch. And one of the data sets that I was using when I first started here, there were some flaws in it, but I didn't understand that because I first started. So it's really important that you check, with maybe people who have worked with the data before, check with managers, check with other teammates and things, just to make sure that everything is correct. Because I ran all my models and I'm like, oh, but I know all of this is right. I don't understand why the data is not looking right. And it was because the key that I was given was incorrect. It was completely wrong. So, this seems very obvious, but even people who are really experienced with data can fall into this because it's easy to trust when like someone who you're working with is like, here's a key, here's the thing that will help you to clean all of the data, but you know, always check. Be curious, ask lots of questions. As I'm going to go through an example shortly here, um, just because you have an intuition about something doesn't mean it's right. And that's why data analysis is so important, because sometimes we have an intuition about what we think is going on, but when we dig into the data, it's actually quite different than what we think it is. Network outside of your team. So again, like connecting with different people, especially different units. I've made it my mission to connect with different people all across the state since I started here, because I want to gain as much knowledge, as much domain knowledge, and as much experience and context as I can, so that I know that any data that I'm working on, I'm going to have resources and people that I can reach out to make sure that I'm, getting all the best and correct information. Yeah, and again, that goes with the networking outside. Study hard, gain domain knowledge, and again, check your ego. Goes back to the whole be curious thing. Make sure that we're actually looking into the data, letting the data speak for itself, and not trying to manipulate it in a way to, put forward our narrative versus what the data is actually showing. So make an honest visualization is a big one for me too. I mean, there's things that we see on the internet all over the place. I'm going to use an example. I removed all of the information from it just to make it neutral, but I just wanted to show a graphic or as an example of how, sometimes people will take something and they'll manipulate parts of the data to make it, look like what their story wants to tell. So, for instance, say this is like sales at a company, and or actually, that's a bad example because higher would be better. Say this is like the amount of fraud that's happening in like some kind of company, and they're trying to look into why this is happening. And so, can anyone in the chat tell me, just by looking at this, if they can see what might be wrong with this visualization, why this might not be the best way to represent what's going on here. Or if someone wants to come off mute, I don't remember. Oh, I think people are all on mute. So yeah, yes, access not starting at zero. So what does that do for this? What it's doing is it's exaggerating, yes, the scale. So it's exaggerating the scale and it's exaggerating what we're seeing. And they're trying to say, why is this so much higher than all the rest of them? Why is there so much more fraud this year than like the next year and in the same quarter? So anyway, and yeah, the line is kind of weird too, but yeah, mainly it's just the scale and starting at zero. So I actually recreated, let's see, color contrast. Yeah, for sure. So I recreated this visualization at the scale of zero, just so you can see how different of a story it is. So the story on the left, they're trying to say, oh, this is so much higher. It's so weird that this is so much higher. But if you look at the true visualization, the story to me looks like um, there isn't one year that's like too much of an outlier. It's really that there's just steady growth over time. So anyway, this is just an example of how to make sure that you have the complete data. Oh, the other part of this I forgot to mention is that um, say this was like the quarters of the year, the visualization on the left would have been pulled on, say that's the fourth quarter. This visualization would have been pulled on, let's say, November 15th or something, or November 1st. Whereas the visualization on the right side was pulled January 1st. So not all of the data was in yet, not everything was there. So, making sure that you're including everything, that it's at the right time, that it's at the right scale, and that we're just being honest and being genuine about the truth of the data. So that was just an example. So now what I'm going to do is run you through, hopefully pretty quickly, because I want to make sure there's time for the visualization contest. Um, just how storytelling kind of works as well. So I really like using the example of my capstone project in school. So it has nothing to do with state, but just a good example of like when you find something, as I mentioned earlier, maintaining curiosity and checking your ego and really going with what the data is showing you and not what your intuition is. This is a good example of that. So my capstone project was on H&M. I'm sure most people here probably know what H&M is. It's a like fast fashion retailer, and the information that I pulled was 31 million items that have been purchased, 9 million transactions, over 1.3 million customers over 2 years in time, so 2018 to 2020. So, in the chat, if anyone wants to give a guess, I would love to know what you think is the average age or like the most common customer age that shops at H&M. I'll give it just a minute. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We're seeing quite a range here. So, yeah, the 35s and 36s is an average. That's really interesting. And then, okay, so we're looking at the 20s, 30s. Okay, cool. Yeah, who do you think, but I guess I should have worded it maybe this way. Who's the most frequent? Like, who do we think the targeted customer is? Like, what's that age range? Global, I believe, is this data set. So it's not just US, it's global. Okay, looks like we're doing a little younger there. So maybe average was like the wrong word to use because I think a lot of you are data people, so you understand how averages work. Okay, cool. So yeah, we're thinking pretty young. And then Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be younger people. And then I assume that the distribution of the ages, it's just, it's going to go up around 30, and then it's just going to trail off and get lower as customers get older. But funny enough, this is actually the distribution of age for the customers at H&M. So as you notice, we have almost this like mini little bimodal distribution here, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know if you all think is it's as interesting as I do, but when I pulled this, I was actually pretty shocked. So the people who said like 35 or 36 for the average are actually pretty correct, pretty spot on. But the only thing is, in that age, what's interesting, yeah, I assume that gift cards are part of the products as well. That's a good point. But I'll get into what my theories are. Um, so yeah, the that's where like kind of this dip is. So it's not even like the peak parts of the age distribution. It's not the people who are shopping there the most. So I mean it's obviously not the least. After about like, I think it's 53 or 52 is this other little peak, which is interesting, and then it trails off from there. Um, Gen Xers here who has shopped at H&M with teen sons. Okay, yes, so that's where I'm headed. So what I did in this data experiment or this data project is I split the data set in half. So I was like, okay, under 40, we're going to say is like this younger kind of millennial Gen Z generation. And then over 40 is like Gen X, boomer generation that we're going to analyze. And we're going to compare them and see what are the differences between these two age groups to see if we can determine or try to predict which one is which based on their purchasing habits. So, what's interesting though is, a lot of people do go by averages. They go by average or median, but the thing here is if you were to go by average or median, so the mode is 21, that's the age. But, I think it was age, let's see, okay, the median is 32 and the mean is 36. So whoever said that, I think someone said 35 or 36 or both. You were absolutely spot on with the average. Good job. You get bragging rights too for this webinar. Anyway, so there's about 17,465 consumers who are aged 36. But then if you go to the the next peak over here, which is that like 52, 53-year-old, we're not quite double, but like pretty close to. I mean, that's a pretty significant increase of a market segment that you're missing out on if you're trying to capture, this one that doesn't really look like they're shopping there all that much anyway. And how can we continue to reach these people who are already or who are coming in that seem like they really like to shop here? So as I thought about it more and I was looking at the age gap between these two, so we're looking at like 52, 53 to 21. Um, that does seem kind of like parent age, right? So the person who said that they are taking their teen sons shopping there, that's kind of what I started to think. So older shopping holiday gifts, yes, that too, for sure. So what if the mature group are the parents and the young are the children? And so in this project, really to prove my point, I'd have to find no difference between the shopping habits, which felt really counterintuitive because a lot of times in data analysis, what we are trying to do is prove that they're like show that we can show a difference. So it was really bizarre trying to prove no difference. So the interesting thing I did is I pulled all of the top items that were purchased. So, for both ranges, the number one at the time, obviously no one's wearing skinny jeans anymore. This was in 2018 to 2020. But yeah, black skinny jeans, regular skinny jeans, black socks were all consistent in the top three items for both age groups. The only thing that differed was the 40 plus was a t-shirt. Skinny jeans are back. They probably will be very short. I'm sure they are. It's trends are going so much quicker now than they used to with social media. But anyway, sorry, I digress. So the 40 plus section, as you can see, has a t-shirt, whereas the 17 to 39 has a strappy crop top. Um, to me, that made complete sense. Obviously, because either it's the parent buying something for themselves, or they're like, no, you're not going to wear this, you're going to wear a t-shirt instead. So, I took these items and I used those as some kind of indicator to put in my model to try to see if I could use it later on to figure out the different ages. This is another graphic that I used that, side by side, it kind of looks like a mess at first. In my other version of this on numbers, it does a cool little animation, but this is Google Sheets, so we're going to work with what we have. But, side by side, this doesn't make a great visualization, but when you show it and then you overlap them together, you can see, oh my gosh, those look very similar. So this is basically showing us the count of the different types of graphical appearance. So is it striped? Is it polka dotted? Is there a graphic something different from that on there? Is it sequence? Is it, all these different types of graphical appearance and how many each of the age groups is purchasing of that type of graphic. And it looks pretty darn similar. There are a couple differences that I point out here. So there's one called front print. I assume it's a graphic design on the front. And then I have no idea what placement P is, but that's just what they categorize this certain graphic as. And those moved in different directions based on the mature or the young group. And so those again are things that I took and held on to as indicators to try to see if I could figure out which group was which. So the next thing I did was unique items. So what are items that the young people are purchasing that the mature people are not purchasing and vice versa? Um, and anyway, so this was interesting to me too, because the young people, so say they're in their like 20s or 30s, okay, now they're buying baby clothes. Whereas the mature people, I mean, I guess unless they're buying for their grandkids, they're, less likely. So it's interesting because they both groups seem to be buying for their kids. But anyway, yeah, there's the young people and the mature people, and these are the unique items. But when I drilled down further to figure out, okay, I've found the unique items. Are they usable? I figured out the count of the most popular of the unique items, but like this striped shirt on the young side was only 86 out of 20 million items. And then the other one was 36 out of 11 million items. So obviously that is not nearly enough to be statistically significant to use in a model. So all that said, the presentation goes on even longer. I included a lot more metrics in here as I went on, but these are all the different age versus indicators that I used. And for anyone who is not familiar, R squared, uh, in short, is what is the relationship, or is there a relationship between the two things that I'm trying to compare? Where 0 is 0% and then 1 is like 100%. So we think of these numbers on the right like a percentage, 0.8 would be 80%, etc. So as you can see, the relationship between these items is basically all 0. There's no relationship. There's no way to indicate or tell whether these things will help us determine the age of the items, even the strappy crop tops. So, I mean, to me, again, that seems like, well, it could be the parents, or the kids are using the parents' credit card, or etc. So what's next? Like, what do we do with this information? And I came up with some examples of what to tell, if I was pitching to leadership or the marketing team or decision makers at this organization. I would say, well, this is just EDA as, just the research side, just the data analysis side, exploratory of what we're looking at here. So we really need to do more scientific research to see if this is actually true. So this is just a theory as of right now, but ways we can do that: email market research. I think it'd be good to make shopping social and connect wish lists together between people, ask for birthdays, email reminders when those connections have the birthdays and wish lists. email notifications for back to school, especially if we do determine that it's parents buying for their children, and email gift lists around popular holidays. But circling back to the market research part of it, I'm sure all of you have received these emails before where it's asking you to rate things and it says, oh, how did you like this item? Will you tell us about it? But just simply including something in that email or in the purchase screen that's asking you, hey, are you purchasing this for yourself or someone else? Could be a really interesting indicator as far as having more information to determine, is there a correlation there between people who are older purchasing for someone else versus people who are younger who are purchasing for themselves? So anyway, this is just an example of how to take a lot of information, use pictures, use graphics to really like put things together to try to, oh, coupons for gift receipts. Yeah, I like that. So moving on, I also included a few ways to kind of revise how we say things as well. Because obviously, we'll have the data, we're showing it to people, but there's, I don't want to say right and wrong ways to say things, but there's certainly optimized ways to communicate when we're trying to persuade or work with people, especially if we're working with either non-technical people or people who maybe have a different viewpoint than us. Um, oops, go forward. So the first one is say the employee churn increased by 10%. Okay, sure. Like why? Or what does that mean? What's the context? What's the impact? And so instead of just giving a straight number and saying, oh, well, this is happening, if you can dig a little bit deeper and try to figure out the why, then that is the context that really helps even more. So um, perhaps like this is how a policy change impacted retention. So was there something that happened recently? Is there something that you've noticed over time in your time series data that you're collecting that an impact has happened, and then all of a sudden this metric has changed over that time? Obviously, we know that correlation doesn't always equal causation, but make sure again to do your solid research and then figure out how to get down to the bottom of, instead of just giving a number, giving a why. The data clearly, this one I thought was really funny. The data clearly shows your approach is wrong. Probably not the best way to make friends. So maybe we can reword that a little bit by saying the data suggests a different trend than what we've seen before. Let's approach why. So I've heard multiple examples of people who work at the state that, a lot of times people kind of get in a habit, or there's a lot of people who have been here a long time and they've had the same approach and the same results, time over time, but that doesn't mean that things can change, right? So as we bring in more data professionals and data scientists and people who have experience with a lot of data products, it is possible that we're going to find new things or new trends, or we're going to find different ways to look at the data that may be different, but also maybe it's a little more thorough or clear than what we had before. So just thinking about how we can work together to get down to the truth of everything, but in a nice way. The best practice, according to the numbers, is to increase market spending. But again, like, okay, so that's what it's showing us in the numbers, but what is the other context? Just because it's showing that, like, how is everything else affected? So perhaps the data suggests that increasing marketing spending correlates with revenue growth, but we should also consider operational costs and market trends before making decisions. So there's always something else that context that is related to what it is that we're talking about. So always think about all sides of things before zeroing in on the one thing that you think that is exactly what it is. So what are the key takeaways from basically everything I spouted out today? Know your audience and adapt communication. So, just assume that everyone's brains works differently. Try to work with all of those things, consider it. Obviously, there's things like color blindness that I did not go into today as far as accessibility. And there's some great websites for that. I know Adobe has a site, and I'll find it and maybe send it out to the group via email. But there's a color blindness generator that you can go to on the Adobe site that will help you to determine those things. But yeah, just being thoughtful of how much text you're putting on the screen, what your images look like, and making sure to create clear visualizations. Network, leverage cross-functional relationships, gain as much insight and context and information as you can to help make better decisions. Tell a clear and honest data story. I think that all of us want to do that, but it's just a good reminder. And last but not least, keep it simple. And then I'm going to leave you with this. This is my very favorite data meme that I've seen on the internet. And it basically shows us how the data starts, how it gets sorted, arranged, presented visually, and then explained with a story. So yeah, I think that's it. Unless anyone had questions in the chat, or I think Summer or Michael could take people off mute if they did have follow-up questions. Yeah, I hope some of this could have been helpful. Maybe it's recapping things for people, but yeah. Oh, is there a SORA resource for business, non-data people for helping them understand the way presentation can affect interpretation and common pitfalls? Um, that's a good question. Uh, Michael, do you want to help me answer that one? I'm not quite sure. I don't know that we have a specific resource, but certainly I think just connecting with one of us, I feel like we're always open if you want to email people on the team to just connect. But I don't know that we have anything specific. But Michael, do you have any response to that?
Yeah, I don't think we keep anything on hand, but I know that we've had presentations in the past along these sort of same lines, just about uh, the kind of visual presentation of data um, that I think are pretty broadly applicable. Don't get super, super in the weeds for people, who may not have a ton of experience working with data. Um, so yeah, for a pretty broad audience. So I think we can go back through, maybe pull some of those together and send them out as part of the kind of wrap up email within the next couple of days after this.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone in the chat. It's really means a lot. I had fun putting this together, and I really enjoy talking about data. I'm a big data literacy and communication advocate. So yeah, I mean, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email. I'm the one that usually sends out a lot of the communication stuff, so you're always welcome to respond to that if you have questions, and I'm always happy to connect with people. So like I said, I kind of made that my mission when I started at the state, is connecting with as many people as possible to get perspective. But yeah, but if you want to take it over, we can quickly do uh, uh, the visualization contest.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, so I'll share my screen. I have the visualizations up. The first one, I think we're going to do the one with submitted by Ross and Rochelle. I don't know if you wanted to, or if you have information to like say on this. I'll share it real quick, and it is interactive, so I'll do a little interacting with it for everyone's benefit. Um, Let me first share my screen. All right, hopefully folks can see that. It's an Oregon Public Library snapshot dashboard. Um, that's a, I can just kind of go through it if we're good with that, or if there are any introductory words. No? Okay.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so this is from Ross. I don't know how to say his last name. Fuqua? I'm not sure. Um, but I was playing around with it a little bit, and there's a lot of different things to check out here. So, kind of following the instructions, you can kind of pick your library essentially. This I pulled up Salem Public Library, but you could like search, Eugene or Mount Angel or something like that. You can pick a year. Um, this is allowing people to filter. So for Salem, there's two different branches, one in West Salem, one in Salem. And then you can click through to other sections to check out like more, specific information. So general information, you can get information about registered patrons and card holders, staffing. So you can kind of see some interactivity here as you can kind of get more up close and personal with some of the lines here. Let's see. Oh, I clicked on something. Okay, so clicking can get to more specific areas of the Viz. I'll keep kind of clicking through quickly, but Rochelle has a link real quick that you can go in and there should be a link you can follow to see this Viz yourself if you want to click around on your own. And that link also doubles as the your voting form. So if you want to pick a favorite and you're like, this is the one that I'm really in love with, you can just submit that vote there. So check that out as we're going along. So yeah, we've got kind of information about revenue, expenditures, lots of donut graphs, makes me hungry. um, Lovely tree map here. I was just working on trying to make one myself here, so this is very cool to see. We've got information about collections, circulation, tech and facilities. So there's a lot of cool library information here. So I'm going to move on to the next visualization. So I think we've got one from Jason Sauer about, and I apologize if I got the last name wrong. Sorry, Jason, related to burn area. And this is actually a GIF popping up here. I'm going to pause real quick and check and see if Jason might be online. I wasn't seeing earlier.
Yeah,
So I'm going to have to riff.
See. I wasn't seeing, but Jason, if you're here, if you want to raise your hand, I can let you speak on your own graphic. But failing that, yeah, Summer, if you want to take us through it.
Yeah, totally. So this is pretty straightforward. This isn't interactive, so there's nothing really for me to click on here. But you can see we're going through a number of years of data, and it's showing all the different kind of burn areas over time, and a quick kind of GIF here, and along with a lot of different other. You get to see some different types of kind of land area, geographic. Information as we go along. So very cool. I'm seeing some comments in the chat about access to the form. I don't know if you caught that, Rochelle, but just flagging that real quick.
So Hillary, were you able to open it all? Because I think it should be open to anyone, whether you have Google or not. It should says anyone with link, or is it simply that you guys like it's literally locked down? Otherwise, if you don't have access to the Google Drive and you just want to throw in the chat which visualization you like, I can put them in the chat.
Okay. Rochelle, I'll give you time to like look through the form, and again, folks, if you just want to like put something in the chat about your favorite down the road, that's totally fine too. So I'm going to move on to the next visualization. We have two more, both from Jim Gores. And I think I saw Jim. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Jim, I'm gonna switch you over here to allow Mike. So if you wanted to come off mute and speak a little bit about the visualizations you submitted, that would be great.
Sure. This is just, I'm submitting these on behalf of the Oregon Department of Energy. This first one is just what our Sankey chart that kind of shows how energy flows into the state and then how it's used within the state, various sources, all that, and then finally, whether it's wasted or used or exported out of the state. So it kind of shows a flow in and out of the entire state.
Like, cool, Jim. Okay, I'll switch over to the other one. This is a Tableau, and looks like there's a lot of different things we can click on. So let me know where you'd like me to go as you chat.
The across the top, there's like, what is that? 5 different categories. That's the main interest. There's ways to drill into it a little bit. But this is basically, once again, going with this just energy usage or electricity usage now. This is how the energy resource mix, as we call it, for the state of Oregon. So you can tell how much hydro we use, how much natural gas we use, and then you can also click and go through each year to kind of see how that changed as well. And and then basically, as you go through it, you can find out if you say have eWeb or Eugene Water and Electric Board, you can see what their mix is versus if you have PGE or PAC, all that kind of stuff. You can kind of see where they get their energy from. And then finally, greenhouse gas, it takes all that and does greenhouse gas emissions by utility. So just a kind of a different way to kind of get the whole energy picture for the entire state. And I will not try and claim full responsibility for this. There's a number of folks that have worked on this.
This is very cool. Thanks, Jim. And I
You're
apologize. I
welcome.
didn't think like I quite kept up with you, so I'm kind of clicking
That's,
through now.
I,
That's
I
my
didn't want
bad.
to, you're welcome to explore it. And folks have hopefully have can find this one especially is available. All of them actually are available online if you just search for energy resource mix and Oregon Department of Energy, and you'd find it.
Thank you for the overview. I appreciate it. Makes me want to learn Tableau. Um, okay. All right. Oh, I like a good bubble graph. We enjoy that. Okay. Well, we're getting towards the end of our time here. I just want to put a big thank you out for those who submitted their visualizations. Um, I'm looking at the chat right now. Looks like we're still maybe figuring out how to do the voting. Um, so,
I do have
uh,
17 responses, just so you know, in
oh,
the
yay.
form. So I am keeping track of that. And then I'm also looking at responses in the chat and adding that in.
Okay, great. Um, well, I think we've kind of come to the end of our webinar today. I don't know if we want to kind of call it on the voting now or if we want to make it a little bit longer. Any thoughts on that, Michael or Rochelle?
Maybe just one more minute, I guess. I'd call it an even 11:55.
Even
And then we'll,
11:55.
I wish we had a countdown clock here,
I
like
know.
a, oh, there we go. Okay, we're gonna count down 10 seconds. Okay, ready? 10,
Yeah, 10,
9,
9,
8, 7,
7, 6,
6, 5.
5,
There might be a
4,
delay. 3,
3,
2,
2, and
1.
1.
Okay, and the winner. Okay, hold on. Oh, let's see. There was one more vote for that. Okay, the winner is the Oregon Department of Energy Power Production Dashboard. So the one that is currently on the screen.
Very
Yay!
cool. Nice job, Jim.
Congratulations. But great visualizations, everyone. Those were all really
Yes.
fun to look at. And it was, I forget whose idea it was to do the contest, but I just thought that was kind of a fun collaborative thing to do. So if it's something that you all enjoyed or enjoyed looking at or participating in, then let us know and we will definitely consider as a group doing more of these.
Yeah. I'm excited. This is a lot of fun to see, and I appreciate all your insight, Rochelle, for the first half of today. So I feel like this was a great webinar, and we really appreciate folks participating and joining. And yeah, so winding things down again, we'll post this online um, in the next couple of days. So it'll be there if you're interested. And otherwise, stay tuned for our next webinar this fall, which I can't believe that is we're that far into 2026, but here we are. So thank you all for again for participating and have a great rest of your day.